Hello. So, this is terrible quality video because it's nighttime and there's no natural light in this room, and also I don't own a camera. This is just my laptop camera that I'm using because I don't make videos frequently. I just wanted to make this video. So, anyways, yeah, I wanted to make a video about my OCD. I have OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. I've made that known. I'm pretty open about it. I like to share things about my life. I know some people are more private, especially when it comes to like mental health and or physical health and or just things that go on in life. If you follow me on any social media or know me in real life, you know that I'm pretty open about anything that happens to me. I don't feel the need to keep it in. If anything, I feel like keeping it in, and for me, is detrimental to my mental health. So, I like talking about these things because I don't know, it makes me feel better, and I feel like it helps people to understand me better and why I do things, and I feel like people maybe look at it and it makes them feel better about things that are going on in their lives. So, I wanted to make this video to go into detail about my OCD because I know I've said multiple times on social media I have OCD and that I'm struggling with it, but I don't think I've ever really explained what OCD looks like in my daily life. So that's kind of why I wanted to make this video. I just feel like it. I wanted to, so I'm gonna do it. I like talking about it sometimes, especially now that I have been in therapy for a while and I feel better than I did when I was at my worst. So to start, I'm just gonna say OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, is terribly badly portrayed in the media. The way they portray it in movies, for the most part, I'm sure there are exceptions, is just wrong, not true. I mean, I guess it kind of just stereotypes it, right? It takes this one inkling that's kind of true and just makes it not true. So obsessive compulsive disorder, obsessions are thoughts that pop up in your head involuntarily, you can't control them, and compulsions are the rituals, as they call them, that you perform to try and relieve the anxiety that obsessions cause. The problem with that is that compulsions only temporarily relieve the anxiety from the obsessions, and then the obsessions come back, and then you compulse again, and then you obsess again, and you compulse again, and in the long run, compulsions actually reinforce your obsessions, and it gets worse and worse and worse until you figure out how to get help. So I am 27. I developed OCD when I was 18. I went away to college and away from family and away from friends, about an hour and a half away from home. So I was already stressed because college is different than high school, and I was away from my family, who I'm very close to. My sisters and my parents are my best friends. I love them. I also was dealing with a really rocky high school relationship that was just going down really quickly, and he was my only significant other ever. So, I mean, first breakup of your life. We had been together for 2 years, so it was just a really, really difficult time for me. And I think I don't want to say that's what triggered my OCD, but they do say that a lot of times OCD manifests for the first time after like a stressful or traumatic event. So I think that's why. So when it started, it was a form of OCD, because OCD has subtypes, called contamination OCD. And I've heard it called also cleanliness OCD, but I would say that for me, contamination OCD is a better term because I don't care about being clean per se, like I do from a personal hygiene standpoint, but like I'm not obsessed with the idea of being clean, but I am obsessed with the idea of like contracting an illness or a disease. So that is how it is for me when I was 18. When it first started, it's so weird how like you can go from being like a normal person to all of a sudden I was terrified of public toilets and sink faucet handles and door handles and birds for whatever reason. Like I thought I was gonna get like some disease from a bird. I don't know. And yeah, so I was afraid for the most part, like any like surface that I knew a ton of people touched. Like door handles going into like big stores, public restrooms, like I said. Like when you go to the store and you have to like pay out your card in the little pin pad. Ugh. Gas stations, I literally had to, this was back when I was 18, I had to wear gloves to get gas because I was afraid to touch the gas pump. Um, so yeah, that was when I was 18. That's when it first started. I ended up going to therapy back then after a few months of dealing with this. Um, and I got a lot better. I went to therapy honestly only for a couple months, and I got better really quickly. Like, I don't know why, but I did. I felt really good. I still sometimes had the obsessions, like a thought would come into my mind, but I very quickly could be like, just let it go, like don't, you're fine. So yeah, after the OCD first started for me, it got so much better. I only dealt with it really for like 6 months before I went to therapy, and I was fine. And that lasted for years. Like I said, I was 18 and I went to therapy pretty quickly, and I felt better really fast, and I was fine up until last fall. So I went about 8 years with really little to no symptoms. Like, it was not a distressing thing in my life. I wouldn't even tell people that I really had OCD. I would tell people that I had OCD. Like, I was like, oh yeah, I used to have OCD. But for whatever reason, and like I said, stressful situations, I started PA school and I got my OCD back. Or I've had OCD this whole time. OCD came roaring back in, and the contamination OCD came back. And I remember the first time it happened, I was volunteering at a clinic, and just remember, like, at the end of it being like, I need to wash my hands. And I remember, like, there was like only one sink there that like even looked remotely clean, and even that sink I was like freaking out about. And I just remember going home that day and washing my hands for like 30 minutes. Like, I put my clothes in the washing machine and started it. I washed my hands for like 30 minutes. I took a shower. Like, I was afraid to wear the shoes that I was wearing that day for a few weeks. Like, it was so weird because I hadn't had this issue in, like I said, 8 years, and all of a sudden here we are again. And I don't know why that happened. So yeah, so the contamination OCD came back. And when I was 18, contamination OCD was the only OCD I had. I didn't have any other subtypes of OCD. And that has not been the case this time. My OCD came back first with the contamination OCD, but then I remember 2 or 3 weeks after having the contamination. Actually, you know what? It was that same weekend. So the contamination OCD came back on a Saturday because I was volunteering at a clinic. And I remember after clinic that day, I had plans to drive back to Austin to see my family. And I remember being on this, like, for some reason my GPS took me a different way than normal. So I was on some country road that I'm never usually on. And I remember, like, you know, when you're driving and you like zone out and you don't even remember like the last 2 minutes of driving. I remember that happened to me, and I was like, oh, like, that's, you know, whatever, that happens all the time. But then all of a sudden my mind was like, what if you hit somebody with your car and you don't remember it? Because you don't remember driving for the last 2 minutes. So what if something happened and you hit someone's dead in the street, and in a few days the police are going to come find you and ruin your life? Like, and it was just so strange for me because I had never had it's called driving OCD, or hit and run OCD as they call it. I had never had these feelings before, not even back when I was 18 when my OCD first started. So I was like, what is going on? Like, why is this happening to me? And when it first happened, because I hadn't experienced it as a form of OCD, I didn't realize it was my OCD. So when it happened, I was just so stressed. I was terrified. I wanted to cry. And I turned the car around. Like, I turned the car around and I had to go back and re-drive that route 2 times because I was like, what if there's someone dead in a ditch on the side of the road? Like, I killed someone. I know I did, even though I didn't, because if you hit someone with your car, you would know. But my brain was just like, what if you killed someone and you don't know it, and there's someone dead in the street, and what are you going to do? And your life's going to be over, and you're going to go to jail. And like, it was terrible. And I remember it took me so long to just drive back and drive back and drive back that, like, it took me like over 4 hours to make the drive home. That usually only takes 3 hours. And I remember getting home and going to my parents and just sobbing. Like, I told them, like, just crying hysterically, telling them, like, I feel crazy, like, I don't know why I feel like this, I feel so distressed, like, I can't stop thinking about this. It's terrible. Like, I hated it. It is so bad. And I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I feel like a crazy person. And I remember Googling it, like, why do I feel like I hit someone? And lo and behold, it's called hit and run OCD. So, yep, there's that. And yeah, that happened. So this was in October of last year. And now we're in July. So it's been like 9 months? I don't know. But anyways, so that's what I'm dealing with now. Those are my two big subtypes, contamination OCD and driving OCD. I started therapy again back in like April? March maybe? I don't know. And it's been going well, and it's improved. Like, I would say, excuse me, yeah, the contamination OCD in therapy got a lot better very quickly. Like, I still struggle with it, especially now that I'm working in clinicals and I'm around, blood and whatnot. Like, those thoughts still come to my head, but it's a lot easier for me to be like, no, like, this is your OCD, like, you're okay, like, continue your work day, you're gonna be fine. But I will say that for whatever reason, the driving OCD is like so hard to get over. Like, so the treatment for OCD is something called exposure response therapy. Exposure response prevention therapy. So basically what you do is you expose yourself to the things that make you anxious, and you prevent a response. So let's say, like, I remember, like, my contamination OCD this time around, for whatever reason, I really struggled, like, back a few months ago, like, walking my dog. Like, I would go walk my dog outside, and if there was a piece of trash on the ground, my mind would go, what if there's blood on it? And if there is blood on it, what if you touched it and don't remember? Or what if you stepped on it, and if you touch your shoes later in the day, and then you touch, like, your eye, or you have a cut on your finger, like, you're gonna get a disease. Like, and but the therapy would be, go walk your dog and come back inside and don't wash your hands. Like, sit with the anxiety, live with it, let it pass, don't wash your hands. But with driving OCD, it's like, don't turn the car around. Like, don't redrive your routes, which for the most part I don't anymore. Very rare that I do that. But another compulsion involved in driving OCD is looking in the rearview mirror. So, like, I'll do a stretch of road, I'll get anxious, and I'll check the rearview mirror to make sure there's no bodies lying in the street, even though I didn't hit anyone, but my mind is telling me I did. So, for whatever reason, I have just been struggling so hard to stop checking with my driving OCD. It's so bad that, like, my contamination OCD is so much better. Yes, I have my moments, but for the most part, I'm like 90% better. Driving OCD, just a few days ago, I got home, and I just remember calling Steven, my husband, and just crying and telling him, like, why I'm tired of feeling like this. I'm tired of being scared. I'm tired of feeling anxious. I'm so exhausted. Every time I get in the car, and I drive all the time, I have these feelings, and yes, sometimes it's worse than others, but I'm so tired of it. And I don't know why it's so much harder for me to stop my compulsions with the driving OCD, but it is. So yeah, so compulsions, like for me, for my contamination OCD, is hand washing. That's the biggest one. I used to wash my hands. I would literally wash my hands for like 45 minutes. It's terrible. And then with my driving OCD, the compulsions are checking the rearview mirror, redriving my routes, avoidance is a big one. So, like, the act of avoiding the things that trigger you is a compulsion. So, like, I remember when my OCD was at its worst, I would avoid walking the dog, right? So, like, Steven was walking the dog 3 times a day because I didn't want to do it, because I knew if I did it, I'd get anxious and I'd wash my hands and I'd start that cycle and I'd be miserable. Or like avoiding driving at night, or avoiding driving in places where there's a lot of pedestrians. Like that is considered a compulsion. Like, but yeah, so that's my OCD in a nutshell. And like I said, I am doing so much better now than I was. I would say earlier this year, February and March were just the worst months of my life as far as OCD goes. I was miserable. I was never suicidal, but like, I mean, there were days where I would wake up in the morning and I would lay in bed for 2 hours because I knew as soon as I got out of bed, something would set me off. I would do something and I'd be like, oh, we gotta go wash your hands. And once you wash them once, you're gonna wash them twice, and you're gonna wash them 3 times. And it was terrible. I didn't want to live throughout the day. Like, I didn't want to die, not suicidal, but I hated the way my life was. I was miserable. Like, I was just so distressed. And to this day, I've never met someone in person that was open with it. I say I've never met someone with OCD. I doubt that's true. I'm sure I have, but I've never met someone who talked to me in person about it and was open to me. So, every time I open up to someone about my OCD, for the most part, they don't get it. And I understand. It's no one's fault, but like, unless you have OCD, I don't think anyone really realizes how distressing it is. Like, sorry. I just think it's a disease that is so hard to really have people understand what it's like to almost feel like a prisoner in your mind. It's like, it doesn't sound hard, like, just go walk the dog and don't wash your hands. But like, I would sit there and obsess over pieces of trash on the ground or this or that. And like, I would obsess if I didn't wash my hands, like, for hours. I would sit there, like, just anxiety 10 out of 10, like, terrified, like, crying, like, sobbing, like, it was terrible. Like, it was worst months of my life. Like I said, I am doing a lot better now. Especially the contamination OCD is so much better, but driving OCD is still giving, like, I would say, like, for every 10 times I drive, I have the obsessions. Every time I get in the car, I have the obsession. Like, I think about it, like, what if I hit someone? What if I hit someone? What if I hit someone? Is it as distressing as it used to be? Like, no, but it's still there, and I'm still struggling trying to get over it. I don't know why it's so hard for me compared to the contamination OCD. It's hard. I don't know why. But it is better. Like, it is better. It's not as bad as it used to be, but it's still, I would say it used to be severe, and it's still moderate, I guess, if I had to describe it. Like, the contamination OCD used to be severe, and I would say it's very mild now, but the driving OCD is still heavily moderate, and I'm so over it. And yeah, so that's all I wanted to talk about. If you want to talk to me about any of this because you're going through it, or you know someone that went through it, or you just have questions, I don't mind answering them. Like I said, I don't feel the need to keep any of this to myself. It doesn't bother me. Makes me feel a little crazy sometimes, but it doesn't bother me. So yeah, if you watched this whole thing, thank you, and